The leak in Section 7 had been dripping for 3 weeks now. Daniel crawled through the narrow maintenance tunnel with his toolkit, headlamp cutting through the darkness. Waypoint Station was falling apart piece by piece, just like everything else in his life. The pay was terrible and the work never ended, but at least out here on the edge of nowhere, people left him alone with his thoughts that he emerged into what used to be a cargo bay. The massive space sat empty and cold, abandoned when the shipping companies found cheaper routes. Daniel walked across the metal floor, his footsteps echoing. Then he saw her. The creature lay curled in the far corner, scales the color of tarnished silver. She was enormous, easily the size of a small shuttle, with wings folded tight against her body. A dragon. Daniel had seen pictures in Rebecca's storybooks, back when she was still alive to beg him for one more chapter before bed. His chest tightened at the memory. The dragon's breathing sounded wrong, raspy and shallow. Her scales looked dull, cracked in places. How long had she been here? Daniel approached slowly, hands visible. The creature's eye opened, watching him. Ancient, tired. The eye was a deep amber, clouded with exhaustion. "Hey there," Daniel said softly. "You don't look so good." The dragon made no sound, just watched him with that weary gaze. Daniel noticed the way her ribs showed beneath the scales, the way she barely moved. Whatever she was, wherever she came from, she was suffering. "I'll be right back," he promised. Daniel returned an hour later with his lunch and 3 meal packets he'd grabbed from the cafeteria. He wasn't sure what dragons ate, but the creature looked half-starved. He set the food down within reach and backed away. The dragon lifted her head slowly, painfully. She sniffed at the offerings, then ate with the careful movements of someone who hadn't had a proper meal in a long time. Daniel sat down against the wall, far enough to not threaten, close enough to show he cared. "I'm Daniel," he said. "I work maintenance here. Not much to tell, really. This place is dying, but the pay clears every month, so I stay." The dragon finished eating and looked at him, really looked at him. Something in that gaze made Daniel feel seen in a way he hadn't felt in years. "I'll call you old girl, if that's all right. You seem like you could use a friend." "Me too, if I'm being honest." Behind the walls, in a room Daniel didn't know existed, 3 beings watched through hidden cameras. Brent stood rigid, his insectoid features unreadable. Beside him, Diane crossed her arms, her human face thoughtful. The younger lawyer, Ravi, leaned forward in his chair. "That's really her," Ravi whispered. "Solara herself. I can't believe we finally found her." 6 months, Brent said, his voice carrying the clicking undertone of his species. 6 months of searching every backwater station in this sector. The Meridian Holdings Board is demanding answers. "She clearly doesn't want to be found," Diane said. "Look at her. She chose this place specifically because it's forgotten." On screen, Daniel was talking to Solara about his shift schedule, about the broken air recycler on Deck 3, about the merchant ship that stopped by last Tuesday. Mundane things. Simple things. The dragon seemed to be listening. "Do we extract her now?" Robbie asked. "Sir, the economic situation is getting critical. Without her leadership, the company is fracturing. Billions of jobs are at stake." Brent watched the screen. The human had no idea who he was talking to. Solara had built an empire over 3 centuries that touched every inhabited system in the galaxy. She controlled shipping lanes, mining operations, agricultural worlds. When she vanished, stock markets crashed. Wars nearly broke out over disputed territories. And here she was, letting a maintenance worker call her old girl. "We wait," Brent decided. The human shows no signs of recognizing her. No attempts to exploit or harm. "He brought her food," Diane observed. "His own lunch. On a maintenance worker's salary, that means something." "Perhaps," Brent said. "Or perhaps he's a clever human playing a long game." "Look at him," Diane pointed at the screen. "Does that look like someone playing a game?" Daniel had pulled out a protein bar, splitting it in half. He tossed one piece towards Solara. The dragon caught it with surprising quickness, a hint of her true speed showing through the exhaustion. "See you tomorrow, old girl," Daniel said, standing up. "I work the early shift, so I'll bring breakfast. Get some rest." He walked away without looking back, without asking for anything. The dragon watched him go, then carefully moved the remaining food closer to her body, protecting it. Interesting, Brent said. That's one word for it, Diane replied. When was the last time someone gave Solara something without wanting something in return? The question hung in the air. None of them had an answer. In 300 years of building the largest corporation in known space, Solara had never experienced simple kindness. Every gift came with strings. Every friendship was transactional. Every loyalty could be bought or broken. We maintain surveillance, Brent ordered. Full-time monitoring. If the human threatens her in any way, we intervene immediately. And if he doesn't, Ravi asked. Brent watched as Solara settled back down, her breathing already seeming easier. Then we watch and learn. The most powerful being in the galaxy ran away to die alone in a forgotten cargo bay. Now a maintenance worker brings her lunch. There's something happening here that we don't understand yet. The screens continued their silent observation as station lights dimmed for night cycle. In the cargo bay, an ancient dragon slept more peacefully than she had in months. In his small quarters, Daniel set his alarm early, already planning what to bring for breakfast. Neither of them knew yet how much they would change each other. Neither knew that lawyers and security teams watched their every interaction. Neither knew that this simple friendship would reshape the economic fabric of the galaxy. For now, it was just a man and a dragon, both lonely, both broken, both finding something unexpected in the darkness of a forgotten place. 3 weeks had passed since Daniel found his unusual friend. The maintenance work continued. The station kept falling apart, but now he had a reason to wake up each day. He'd started spending his lunch breaks in the cargo bay, bringing whatever food he could spare or afford. Today he carried a small medical kit along with breakfast. Old Girl was awake when he arrived, her head already lifted in anticipation. That was new. For the first 2 weeks, she'd barely moved at all. Now she watched the door during the times he usually appeared. Got something different today, Daniel said, setting down the food. Figured those cracks in your scales might hurt. Brought some antiseptic and bandaging. Used to patch up my daughter when she scraped her knees. The words came easier now. He talked about Rebecca while treating Old Girl's wounds, gentle hands working across scarred scales. The dragon held perfectly still, though the medicine must have stung. She loved stories about dragons, Daniel continued, his voice soft. Made me read the same book 17 times. The Dragon's Heart, it was called. About a dragon who protected a whole village just because she wanted to. Rebecca said that's what real strength was. Choosing to be kind when you could choose anything. He finished bandaging a particularly deep crack near the dragon's shoulder. Old Girl made a low rumbling sound, almost like a purr. Daniel smiled despite himself. I couldn't protect her, though. Got sick when she was 8. Needed treatment we couldn't afford. I tried everything, worked 3 jobs, sold everything we had. Wasn't enough. He packed up the medical kit. That's why I'm here, I guess. Couldn't stand being in places that remembered her. The dragon moved closer, slowly lowering her massive head until it rested near Daniel. Not touching, but close. An offer of comfort that made his throat tight. In the observation room, Diane replayed footage from the past weeks. Her condition is improving. Look at the scales, they're regaining luster. She's moving more, eating regularly. Because of the human's care, Ravi noted, reviewing medical scans. Basic first aid and regular meals. Things we could have provided with our resources, but she ran from us. It's not about the resources, Brent said quietly. Watch how he treats her. They watched Daniel clean the area around Old Girl, talking about his boring day, complaining about the broken water system on Deck 5. Ordinary conversation, the kind that expected nothing in return. The board sent another message, Ravi reported. They're threatening to declare her legally dead in 1 week if we don't produce her. The company is fragmenting. 3 subsidiaries are on the verge of collapse. That represents how many jobs? Diane asked. 2.7 million direct employment. Estimates suggest 15 million more independent industries. Brent's mandibles clicked, a sign of stress in his species. All because Solara wanted to disappear. Can you blame her? Diane gestured at another screen, showing archived footage. This is from her last board meeting 6 months ago. They watched as Solara, in her full, magnificent glory, sat at the head of a massive conference table. Her business partner and supposed friend proposed a merger that would have personally enriched him while destroying an entire agricultural colony. When Solara refused, he'd smiled and said he'd expected as much from a creature without a heart. She built her empire by being brilliant and ruthless, Diane said. But somewhere along the way, every relationship became about profit. Everyone wanted something. Everyone had an angle. On the current feed, Daniel was reading to Old Girl from a battered book he'd found in the station library. His voice carried through the speakers, telling an adventure story about exploration and wonder. The dragon's eyes were fixed on him, attentive in a way she never was during corporate meetings. He doesn't know, Ravi said. He genuinely has no idea who she is. The question, Brent said, is what happens when he finds out. Will he change? Will he suddenly see opportunities instead of friend? There's another question, Diane countered. What if he doesn't change? What if he's actually just a decent person who saw someone suffering and decided to help? Humans are rare for that, Ravi observed. Among spacefaring species, they're unusually inclined toward compassion for other beings. Statistically improbable compassion, really, doesn't mean he won't want something eventually, Brent argued. Everyone wants something. On screen, Daniel finished his break and stood to leave. See you tomorrow, Old Girl. I'm working a double shift, so it might be later than usual. Don't worry, though. I'll bring dinner. He paused at the door, looking back. You know, you're the best friend I've had in years. Thanks for listening to me ramble. It helps. Then he was gone. The dragon watched the door for a long moment before settling back down, curling around the small collection of items Daniel had brought over the weeks. A blanket, the medical kit, 3 books he'd left for her. He called her his friend, Diane said softly. Economic markets are collapsing and he's making friends, Brent said, but there was less bite in his tone than before. What if that's exactly what she needed? Ravi suggested. Not a business partner or an employee or a stakeholder. Just a friend. Brent pulled up another set of files. Station Administrator Peterson is getting suspicious. He's noticed Daniel accessing restricted areas. We've bribed him for now, but he'll want more eventually. How much more? Diane asked. Does it matter? We have essentially unlimited resources to protect her. Resources provided by the empire she built, Diane said. The same empire that drove her to this. There's an irony there. They watched in silence as Old Girl carefully arranged Daniel's blanket, creating a more comfortable resting spot. Small acts of self-care that hadn't happened in the first weeks. Signs of healing that medical technology alone couldn't provide. 1 week, Brent repeated the deadline. Then the board forces our hand. We need to decide what we're going to do. Maybe, Diane said, we should be thinking about what Solara wants to do, and what role Daniel plays in that. The observation continued through the night. 3 beings watching over the galaxy's richest person as she slept in an abandoned cargo bay, protected by the kindness of someone too poor to save his own daughter. Daniel had developed a new habit. After finishing his daily reports, he'd stop by the station's tiny library and pick books he thought Old Girl might enjoy. He'd noticed something over the past month. When he read adventure stories, she seemed more alert, her tail moving slightly. During sad passages, she'd go very still. The dragon understood every word. Today he brought a collection of poetry. He settled into his usual spot against the wall, lunch beside him, and opened the book. Old Girl had cleaned her own scales that morning. He could tell because they gleamed in places they hadn't before, catching the dim cargo bay lights. This one's called The Road Not Taken, Daniel said, then began reading. As he spoke the final lines about taking the path less traveled, Old Girl made a sound he'd never heard before, almost like a sigh of recognition. You really do understand, don't you? Daniel said, looking at her directly. You're not just some lost animal. You know exactly what I'm saying. The dragon met his gaze and slowly, deliberately, nodded her massive head. Daniel felt his breath catch. Can you speak? Old Girl was quiet for a long moment. Then she shifted, rising to her full height for the first time since he'd known her. The change was startling. She wasn't sick or weak. She was powerful, ancient, magnificent. Her scales caught the light like precious metal. Her wings spread slightly, filling the space with presence. Daniel stood on shaky legs, suddenly aware of how small he was in comparison. But he didn't run. The dragon had been vulnerable with him for weeks. He could be brave for one moment. "Why pretend?" he asked quietly. The dragon spoke, her voice deep and resonant, carrying the weight of centuries. "Because I wanted someone to see me, not what I own." The words hung in the air between them. Daniel processed this slowly. "What you own? Are you important or something?" In the observation room, Ravi actually laughed. "He doesn't know. After all this time, he genuinely has no idea." "Remarkable," Brent admitted. The dragon, Solara, seemed equally surprised by Daniel's ignorance. "You truly don't recognize me? Should I? I mean, you're a dragon. That's pretty special by itself. But you sound like people expect you to be someone specific." "I am Solara, founder and CEO of Meridian Holdings." Daniel's expression remained blank. "Never heard of it. Saw the Now Solara looked stunned. "Meridian Holdings controls 40% of galactic shipping. We employ billions across 80 star systems. When I disappeared, economic markets crashed." "Oh." Daniel sat back down, overwhelmed. "That sounds stressful. Is that why you came here? To get away from all that?" "I came here to die," Solara said bluntly. "I wanted to go somewhere no one knew my name. Somewhere I could just stop being the person everyone needed me to be." Daniel absorbed this. "But you didn't die." "No. A foolish human kept bringing me food, kept talking to me like I mattered, not because of what I could do for him, but because he decided I deserved kindness." Her voice carried something that might have been wonder. "Do you have any idea how rare that is?" "People should be kind," Daniel said simply. "It's not complicated. You seemed lonely." "So am I. Thought we could be lonely together, maybe make it less heavy." 300 years, Solaris said quietly. "I have lived for 3 centuries, built an empire that spans the stars. Every person who approached me wanted something. Every friendship was about advantage. Every conversation was a negotiation. Then you brought me half your lunch because you thought I was hungry." "You were hungry," Daniel pointed out. "Yes, but you didn't know feeding me would benefit you. You didn't know who I was. You simply saw someone suffering and decided to help." Daniel shrugged. "That's just being human." "No," Solaris said firmly. "That's being you. Most beings, including most humans, would have seen opportunity, would have calculated advantage. You saw a friend. You are my friend," Daniel confirmed. "Doesn't matter if you're rich or famous or whatever. You listen to me talk about Rebecca. You let me feel less alone. That's what friends do." In the observation room, the silence was profound. Diane wiped her eyes. Ravi stared at the screen in disbelief. Even Brent seemed moved, his usual rigid posture slightly softened. "The board's deadline is in 3 days," Ravi said finally. "We have to do something. We tell them we found her," Brent decided. "We tell them she's alive and recovering. And we tell them she'll return on her own terms." "Will they accept that?" Diane asked. "They'll have to, because I'm starting to understand something. Forcing Solara back might get the corporation running again, but we'd be dragging back someone who wanted to die. That woman on screen? She's healing. Because of him." On the feed, Daniel was asking Solara about her life. Not about her company or her wealth, but about what made her happy, what she liked to do, who she was beneath the titles. "I don't remember," Solara admitted. "It's been so long since anyone asked me that. Since I asked myself that." "Well," Daniel said, "maybe we can figure it out together. I'm pretty boring, but I'm a good listener. And I've got nothing but time and a job that barely needs me." "You would continue?" Solara asked. "Even knowing who I am, why would that change anything? You're still old girl, still my friend. Money and power and all that stuff doesn't make you less lonely. Maybe makes it worse from what you're saying." "It does," Solara agreed softly. "Then forget about it for now. Just be here. Be my friend. Everything else can wait." Solara lowered her head again, resting near Daniel. This time he reached out, carefully placing a hand on her scaled snout. The gesture was simple, friendly, completely without fear. "Thank you, Daniel," she said. For seeing me. Just me. That's what friends do, he repeated, smiling. Now, you want to hear more poetry? Or should I complain about Peterson trying to cut my break time again? The poetry, Solara decided. And then your complaints. I find I enjoy both. Daniel laughed and opened the book again. In the observation room, three lawyers watched and finally understood what they'd been witnessing. Not a transaction, not an opportunity, just two lonely souls finding comfort in genuine friendship. The rarest treasure in a galaxy built on exchange. Daniel used his entire paycheck buying supplies from a merchant ship that docked at Waypoint Station. Plants in containers, better lighting panels, even a small heater for the cargo bay. The crew thought he was crazy, spending maintenance wages on luxury items. He didn't care. Solara deserved better than cold metal and darkness. Installing the lights took him 3 evenings. Solara watched with amusement as he cursed at stubborn wiring and nearly fell off his ladder twice. When he finally got them working, warm light flooded the cargo bay. It looked almost comfortable now. You didn't have to do this, Solara said. The place looked depressing, Daniel replied, setting up the plants near her resting area. Figured everyone deserved something nice to look at, even rich dragons hiding from their responsibilities. Especially rich dragons hiding from their responsibilities, Solara corrected, a hint of humor in her ancient voice. Daniel had started teasing her about her wealth, making jokes that would have horrified anyone who knew her reputation. She found she loved it, loved being treated like a person instead of an institution. Tell me about Rebecca, Solara said as Daniel worked. He'd shared pieces over the weeks, but never the full story. Daniel was quiet for a moment, adjusting a plant that didn't need adjusting. She was 7 when the symptoms started. Some rare genetic thing, they said. Treatable if caught early and if you could afford the treatment. We couldn't. I worked every hour I could find. Sold our house, our car, everything. Applied for assistance programs. Got rejected by all of them. Why? Solara asked, though she suspected she knew. Bureaucracy. We made just enough that we didn't qualify for help, but not nearly enough to pay for treatment. Rebecca asked me once if she was expensive. 8 years old and worried about being a burden. His voice cracked. I told her she was priceless. Told her we'd figure it out. But you couldn't. No. She died 3 weeks before her 9th birthday. I had the money by then, finally scraped together enough, but it was too late. The disease had progressed too far. Daniel sat down hard. I think about that a lot. 3 weeks. If I'd just been faster, worked harder, found one more job. Solara moved closer. It wasn't your fault. Wasn't anyone's fault, Daniel said. That's what makes it worse. No villain to blame, no evil to fight. Just circumstances and bad timing and not enough money in the right place at the right time. In the observation room, even Brent looked uncomfortable. They were watching a man break open old wounds, and Solara comforted him with the patience of someone who understood profound loss. The board is getting aggressive, Ravi reported, trying to focus on work. They want Solara back immediately. Some members are suggesting we send security to extract her. If we did that, we'd lose her completely, Diane said. Look at her. She's present in a way she hasn't been in years. Because of a human, Brent acknowledged. The question remains, what do we do when the board forces our hand? We asked Solara what she wants, Diane suggested. Novel concept, I know. On screen, Solara was speaking softly to Daniel. If you had the money now, what would you do with it? Make sure other kids got treatment, Daniel said immediately. Make sure other parents didn't have to count pennies while their children suffered. No child should die from something treatable just because their parents are poor. A medical fund, Solara mused. A big one, Daniel agreed. Big enough that money was never the reason. That's what I'd do if I won the lottery or found a treasure or whatever. He laughed bitterly. Not that it helps Rebecca now. No, Solara said, but it could help other Rebeccas. Daniel looked at her, confused. I'm a maintenance worker. I can barely afford plants. I'm not starting any medical funds. But I could. Daniel blinked. What? Meridian Holdings generates more profit in a day than most planets see in a year. I could establish a fund, large enough to help every child who needs treatment they can't afford. You do that. Daniel asked, hope and disbelief warring in his voice. I've spent 300 years accumulating wealth. I should do something meaningful with it. Solara settled into a more comfortable position. But there's a condition. Of course there is, Daniel said, the hope dimming. I returned to Meridian Holdings. Take back control, and you come with me. Daniel stood up. What? No, I'm not. I can't. I don't know anything about running companies. I don't need you to run the company. I need you to keep me honest, to remind me what matters. Solara met his eyes. These past weeks with you, I've remembered who I wanted to be. Before the Empire, before every relationship became a transaction. You see me, Daniel. Just me. That's rarer than all the wealth in my accounts. I'm nobody, Daniel protested. I fix leaking pipes. I read poetry badly. I don't belong in your world. My world is broken, Solara said firmly. It needs someone who understands that kindness isn't weakness, that caring for others isn't a transaction. I need someone who will tell me when I'm wrong, who will keep me grounded. There must be qualified people, experts, consultants. I have thousands of those. They tell me what I want to hear or what benefits them. You told me the cargo bay looked depressing and spent your paycheck making it better. You didn't ask permission or calculate advantage. You just cared. Daniel sat back down, overwhelmed. This is insane. Probably, Solara agreed. But I've decided. I'll return to Meridian Holdings. I'll fix what I abandoned. I'll establish your medical fund. But I need you there to remember why I'm doing it, to be my conscience. And if I say no, then I'll establish the fund anyway and stay here until the board declares me dead and dissolves everything I built. Your choice, Daniel. It was manipulation, but gentle manipulation. The kind that gave him real choice while making the right answer obvious. Daniel recognized it and found he didn't mind, because Solara was offering to save children like Rebecca. How could he say no to that? I want full veto power, Daniel said finally. If I think something's wrong, we don't do it, no matter what the prophets say. Agreed. And we keep this. The morning visits, the poetry, the friendship part. I wouldn't have it any other way. Daniel took a deep breath. Then I guess I'm becoming a corporate advisor. Rebecca would have thought this was hilarious. She would have been proud, Solara corrected gently in the observation room. Brent opened a communication channel. Notify the board. Solara is returning. On her terms. With a guest. The transport ship was larger than any building Daniel had ever entered. His quarters alone were bigger than his entire apartment on Waypoint Station. Floor-to-ceiling windows showed the stars streaking past as they traveled toward Meridian Central. He felt sick. This is a mistake, he told Solara for the 15th time. I don't belong here. You belong wherever I say you belong, Solara replied. She looked different now, fully recovered, scales gleaming like polished silver, moving with the grace and power of her true nature. Besides, we made a deal I'm regretting. Brent entered the lounge area, his insectoid features unreadable. We'll arrive at Meridian Central in 4 hours. The board has been notified of your return. They're eager to meet your companion. I bet they are, Daniel muttered. They probably think I'm some con artist who manipulated their boss. Some do think that, Brent admitted. Others are simply confused. Solara has never brought a personal advisor before, especially not a maintenance worker. Former maintenance worker, Daniel corrected. Now I'm unemployed and completely out of my depth. You'll do fine, Solara assured him. Just be yourself. Myself got me fired from 3 different stations for arguing with management about safety violations. Myself doesn't know when to shut up. Perfect, Solara said. That's exactly what I need. Diane joined them, carrying a datapad. The initial reports are promising. News of your return has stabilized the markets. Stock prices are recovering. The 3 failing subsidiaries have received emergency support. And the medical fund? Solara asked. Legal is drafting the framework. Daniel's specifications were clear. Any child, any species, any system. If the treatment exists and the family can't afford it, the fund covers it completely. Daniel felt something loosen in his chest. How much did you allocate? 5 billion credits initially, Diane replied, with automatic increases based on need. Billion, Daniel repeated faintly. With AB, Meridian Holdings generates approximately $30 billion in profit quarterly, Brent explained. This represents a manageable allocation. Daniel had to sit down. 5 billion credits. Enough to save thousands of children like Rebecca. Maybe tens of thousands. The number was so large it stopped meaning anything. You're thinking about her, Solara observed gently. Always thinking about her, Daniel admitted. Wondering if she'd be proud or horrified that her dad is flying through space with the richest being in the galaxy. Proud, Solara said with certainty. You told me she believed real strength was choosing kindness. You're doing that on a galactic scale now. Meridian Central appeared in the viewport, a moon converted entirely into a corporate headquarters. Cities of buildings covered the surface, ships coming and going like insects around a hive. Millions of people worked here, all of them depending on Solara's leadership. The weight of it pressed down on Daniel. How had he thought he could do this? The landing was smooth. As they disembarked, Daniel saw hundreds of employees lined up. All of them bowed as Solara passed. She acknowledged them with regal grace, every inch the powerful executive. Daniel shuffled behind, feeling like an imposter. The main conference room was enormous. 60 board members sat around a table that could have doubled as a landing pad. All of them stared as Solara entered with Daniel trailing behind. Members of the board, Solara began, her voice carrying the authority of centuries. I have returned. During my absence, I had time to reflect on our direction. Changes will be made. With respect, one board member said, a tall reptilian being, we're simply glad you're safe. The markets have been chaotic. I am aware. I'm also aware that in my absence, several of you attempted to seize control for personal gain. Solara's gaze swept the room. Those attempts are noted and will be addressed. Nervous shifting among several members. However, my primary concern is restructuring our priorities. We've focused exclusively on profit margins and market dominance. This changes now. Changes how? Another member asked. We will implement policies that prioritize people over pure profit, starting with the medical fund my advisor has proposed. All eyes turned to Daniel. He wanted to disappear. This is your advisor? Someone asked skeptically. A human with no corporate experience? His experience is in being human, Solara replied, in understanding what matters beyond quarterly reports. He will have full veto power over any decision that prioritizes profit over people. The room erupted. Protests, objections, demands for explanation. Solara let them rage for a moment, then slammed her tail against the floor. The impact silenced everyone instantly. This is not negotiation. Anyone who cannot accept these terms may resign. I will not mourn your departure. The silence was absolute. Daniel watched as the most powerful beings in the galaxy sat like scolded children. Finally, one member spoke. What qualifies him to make these decisions? Daniel surprised himself by answering. I buried my daughter because I couldn't afford to save her. I know what it's like to be powerless while corporations debate profit margins. That's my qualification. I remember what you've all forgotten. People aren't resources. They're people. The room stayed quiet. Several members looked uncomfortable. The medical fund is the beginning, Solara continued. We will review labor practices, environmental impacts, and community effects. Meridian Holdings will maintain profitability, but not at any cost. Some shareholders won't accept this, a member warned. Then they can sell their shares. I control 60%. My decision is final. Over the following hours, they discussed implementation. Daniel mostly listened, overwhelmed by the scale. But when someone suggested limiting the medical fund to certain systems for efficiency, he spoke up. No limits. Every child, everywhere. That's the whole point. The logistics are complicated, the member argued. Then uncomplicate them, Daniel said firmly. Or are you telling me the largest corporation in the galaxy can't figure out how to help sick kids? Brent had a smile. Diane nodded approvingly. Solara looked proud. After the meeting, Daniel collapsed in his new office. It had a view of 3 cities and was larger than his childhood home. Solara found him there. You did well. I was terrified, but you spoke up when it mattered. That's all I need. Daniel looked out at the sprawling corporate landscape. I hope I don't mess this up. You won't. You'll keep me honest. Keep me remembering why we're doing this. For the Rebeccas, Daniel said quietly. For all of them, Solara agreed. 5 years changed everything and nothing. Daniel still woke early, still brought breakfast to Solara, still read poetry in the quiet morning hours. The difference was the location. Instead of an abandoned cargo bay, they met in a replica Solara had built in the heart of Meridian Central. Same cold metal floors, same dim lighting, same feeling of comfortable isolation. You didn't have to recreate it exactly, Daniel said, settling into his familiar spot against the wall. Could have made it nicer. It was perfect as it was, Solara replied. This is where I remembered how to be myself. Daniel opened the book he'd brought, a new collection of poems from a writer on the outer colonies. But before he could start reading, his data pad chimed. He glanced at it and smiled. Another one, Solara asked. Family on Kepler Station. Their son needed treatment for a genetic disorder. Fun covered it completely. He's going home today. Daniel showed her the photo. A small child grinning, holding his parents' hands. How many is that now? 247,000 children, Daniel said, his voice thick. 250,000 kids who didn't have to be Rebecca. The medical fund had exceeded every projection. Other corporations, shamed by Meridian's example, started their own programs. Competition and compassion, Diane called it. The galaxy was slowly becoming a place where a child's survival didn't depend on their parents' bank account. The board meeting is in an hour, Solara reminded him. They want to discuss the new labor initiative. Let me guess, they think guaranteed paid leave for new parents is too expensive. Several members have concerns about the cost. Daniel closed his book. Then I'll explain again why people aren't machines. They seem to need frequent reminders. You've gotten more confident in these meetings. I've gotten more angry, Daniel corrected. Used to be scared of those people. Now I just see them as obstacles between workers and dignity. They'd clashed dozens of times over the years, Daniel and the board. But Solara backed him every time. Slowly, reluctantly, Meridian Holdings transformed. Better wages, better conditions, better treatment. Profits dipped slightly in the first year, then soared as worker productivity and loyalty increased. Other corporations watched and learned. The Meridian model, they called it. Treating employees like people created better results than treating them like expenses. I got a message from Ravi, Daniel said. He's leaving the legal team to start a nonprofit, using our medical fund as a template for education access. He learned well, Solara noted, as did Diane. Her security reforms have been adopted by 6 other major corporations. Even Brent smiled last week, Daniel added. Actual Ismail. I thought his face might crack. You've changed all of them. Changed all of us. I didn't do anything special. Just kept asking if we were being kind. If we were treating people the way we'd want to be treated. That's more revolutionary than you realize, Solara said. For 300 years, I built an empire on efficiency and profit. You reminded me that the point of having power is to use it well. Daniel looked around the replica cargo bay. Do you ever miss it? The real one, I mean. The quiet. The simplicity, sometimes Solara admitted. But then I think about those 250,000 children. About the families we've helped. About the changes spreading across the galaxy. I can't regret leaving our quiet bay for that. Rebecca would have loved this, Daniel said softly. She used to tell me stories about dragons who protected people. Said that's what magic was for. Turns out she was right. She'd be proud of you. Maybe. Or maybe she'd laugh that her dad somehow became friends with the richest dragon in space. Daniel smiled. She had a good laugh. I miss hearing it. They sat in comfortable silence, the kind only possible between true friends. Eventually, Daniel stood and stretched, ready to go argue with billionaires about basic human dignity. Always, Solara replied, rising to her full height. Though they're less argumentative these days. You've worn them down. Good. They should be tired of being wrong. The meeting went as expected. Daniel vetoed 3 proposals that prioritized profits over people. Solara backed him each time. The board grumbled, but accepted it. They'd learned that fighting was pointless. Afterward, Daniel stood in his office, looking out at Meridian Central. Millions of people working, living, thriving. The city never slept, always moving, always growing. Diane joined him in the window. You changed the galaxy, you know? One breakfast at a time. Solara changed it. I just reminded her why. You're too modest. Before you, she was ready to die. Now she's the most progressive CEO in known space. That's not coincidence. I just treated her like a friend. Exactly, Diane said. That's what made all the difference. The richest being in the galaxy, and all she needed was one person who saw her, not her wealth. Daniel thought about the cargo bay, about finding an exhausted dragon and deciding to share his lunch. Such a small choice. Such enormous consequences. I need to send a message, he said suddenly, to the medical fund coordinators. Tell them to expand the program. If we're helping children, we should help their parents too. Medical care for whole families, not just kids. That'll cost billions more. We have billions. What's the point of having them if we don't use them for good? Diane smiled. I'll draft the proposal. Solara will approve it. How do you know? Because in 5 years, you've never suggested something that wasn't worth doing. She trusts your compass. That evening, Daniel returned to the replica cargo bay. Solara was already there, arranging the space. She did this sometimes, reliving the early days when everything was simpler. Thank you, she said as he entered. For what? For seeing a tired old dragon and deciding she deserved kindness. For changing my life. For reminding me what matters. Daniel sat in his usual spot. Thank you for letting me. For trusting me. For saving all those children I couldn't save. We saved them, Solara corrected. Together, outside, the galaxy continued turning. Corporations reformed their practices, following Meridian's example. Children received treatment regardless of cost. Workers were treated with dignity. All because a maintenance worker shared his lunch with a lonely dragon, and both of them chose to be better. Daniel opened his book and began to read. Solara listened, content in the simple ritual that had started everything. In the end, that's all it took to change the galaxy. One person choosing kindness. One friendship without conditions. One morning at a time.